A few pieces of debris and flotsam were all that remained of the yacht today. The 10-metre sloop ran into rocks fringing Moon Island near the entrance to Lake Macquarie about 8:30 last night after a day sail from Sydney's northern beaches. Police say the 56 and 60-year-old brothers aboard were lucky to escape the wreck with their lives.
I think they're very lucky, yes, because all it takes is one wave to smash them onto the rocks and they're unconscious and they would have drowned.
Coast Guard and coastal patrol vessels went to the men's aid last night after they sent a brief distress message, but due to the rough sea, the Care Flight helicopter was used to winch the men off the island. The operation was complicated by thousands of nesting seagulls, which posed a threat to the aircraft.
That northeast corner of the island is absolutely treacherous. Since May, we've had 5 vessels that have been overturned on that corner of the island. The latest one was Sunday, about 4 weeks ago. Luckily, there's been no injuries, but there's been a number of boats lost. As this vessel last night, it's totally gone.
The 2 men returned home to Sydney after their ordeal, while their $75,000 yacht has been consigned to the deep. Paul Lobb, NBN News.
Stealing from motor vehicles is often an opportunistic crime, which, according to Assistant Commissioner Peter Parsons, makes it extremely difficult to police.
And they'll see an opportunity to break into a car or even enter an open car, an unlocked car, and steal an item. So that makes it doubly difficult for us.
Figures released by the New South Wales Bureau of Crime Statistics and Research indicate this sort of crime has risen in the Hunter region by 7.8% since June 2004. Mr Parsons says car owners can help curb the crime by being more vigilant with their vehicles.
Lock your cars, don't leave your valuables in open view.
According to the statistics, all other crime categories are either down or stable. There's been no significant change to the number of violent or sexual assaults, nor has there been any change to the number of armed robberies in the region. While break and enters are down by 9.5% and shoplifting has dropped by 14.5%.
And the fact that we have such a high population, we have such a high tourist population, I think the stats are pretty darn good.
Madeline Bond, NBN News.
The Hunter region has experienced it all: raging bushfires, devastating floods and the 1989 earthquake which claimed 13 lives. It was Australia's most destructive quake, catching the people of Newcastle unaware, with emergency crews scrambling to find and rescue the injured. It was a lesson learnt the hard way, and since then emergency management plans are now meticulously prepared.
I think most local authorities in Australia these days have come a long way since the 70s and 80s, and Newcastle in particular with the experience of the earthquake in '89. That was a real shock.
Newcastle and Lake Macquarie Emergency Management Committee members today hosted Ken Granger, an expert in the field. He's conducting a review of our disaster plans with 27 potential hazards identified for investigation.
We've got the full range of natural hazards, from ex-tropical cyclones and east coast lows, thunderstorms, through to heat waves, droughts, bushfires, earthquakes, tsunamis even.
A terrorism attack is also on the list of possible emergencies due to the current political climate and concerns that Newcastle could be vulnerable due to the city's proximity to the port. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
Nelson Bay is probably reinventing itself these days with the popularity of the Salamander Shopping Centre, and it will become a more tourist-focused community.
Divers herald Fly Point at Nelson Bay as one of the best shore dives in Australia, boasting some of the rarest species of the barrier reef and coral sea, all on Port Stephens' doorstep.
You have your good days and your bad days diving, but sometimes you find something you've never seen before, and generally when you do see that, you don't have your camera with you.
But he still managed to capture images of some of the port's spectacular marine species, some of which are unique to the area.
There's one really interesting little shell. It's known as the platypus egg cowrie. Now, it was only previously found off Broome in Western Australia, but people don't realise that we've actually got a good population of them living in the port. And we have some nudibranchs, which is this bright, colourful sea slug that's only found in Port Stephens.
He's now embarked on a 3-year study into the biology, habitat and best way to protect the threatened seahorse species.
We're trying to show that a marine protected area might be useful for seahorse conservation. So we're trying to show the difference between the Fly Point and Aquatic Reserve and comparing it to sites outside the reserve. Because seahorses are in decline worldwide, and by maybe using a marine protected area as a management tool, it could help promote their survival.
The seahorses will be tagged and unique identifying characteristics such as their sex, size and colour recorded. Christy Carter, NBN News.
Julie Young provides a warm welcome behind the desk of a Newcastle gym. Even she says she smiles too much. But at her second job, she's the smiling assassin. The 21-year-old is a referee in one of Country Rugby League's most competitive divisions. That's her in the green and black, the tiny touchy, keeping everything in perspective.
I'm short, nothing can change that. So everywhere I go, people are going to be bigger than me, no matter what I do. And then getting out there just means I can get in amongst it instead of sitting on the sideline.
One of 2 women refereeing in the Newcastle comp, Julie's passion for the game started as a child at primary school. Her brothers still play. She's even reported one of them for a high tackle. Criticism from the crowd, clubs, indeed family is part of the challenge, says Julie, as is becoming the first female whistleblower in the NRL.
Don't know if it'll happen. A lot of people believe not because they've never had it before. But doesn't mean I can't strive for it. It keeps me fit. So, yeah, what have I got to lose?
And all the criticism, though, that referees have copped and touch judges lately, does it turn you off at all?
Not really, because if they keep copping it and they get dropped, that means I get pushed up.
Very much a case of watch this space.
A scoreless draw against New Zealand saw the Jets become the only away team to claim a point. Their second round opponents, the Queensland Roar, sit on top of the A-League, following a 3-0 win over Perth, a result that flatters the Queenslanders, according to the Jets coach.
In front of 20,000 people away from home and such a major distance that they had to travel, I think Perth took the game to them and showed some good aspects of their play in the first half, which gives us great hope as well.
Despite a limited preparation, Andrew Durante, Shane Webb and Joel Griffiths are all expected to play, with Jade North and Job Wheelhouse unavailable through injury. Ben Kennedy suits up as the side's only keeper. Theodora Kopoulos says last week's game in New Zealand was no indication of the Jets' potential.
To me, it wasn't a surface that you can play constructive, quality football.
Captain and coach both sounding the call to arms for Newcastle's only home game until round 6.
Let's hope that we do get a lot of people out here tomorrow because, it's a bit of a cliche, but the supporters do make up the 12th player on the field.
They have a major role to play tomorrow and the remaining 9 games and hopefully the semi-final phases of the competition.
Tomorrow night's game kicks off at 8. Mitchell Hughes, NBN News. The country's 15 best men's and women's ABA teams began arriving in Newcastle this morning. Victoria's Sandringham Sabres the first to get a feel for the Broadmeadows Stadium. Last night, the region's representative team was wrapping up preparations. The Newcastle Hunters looking to erase the memory of a disappointing end to another successful Waratah League season.
We went down in overtime to Sutherland, who went on to be the final winners. They actually went on to win the final by 51. It was a bit of a heartbreaker.
The Hunters go into the tournament ranked 8th, earning a first-round matchup with the country's top team, Victoria's Knox Raiders. With players such as Mitch Selwood, Adam Melmoth and Matt McGovern boasting NBL experience, the Hunters refuse to be intimidated.
Even within the Waratah League, we played teams that actually had 2 boomers. We had people of the calibre of Mark Worthington and David Barlow playing.
Mitchell Hughes, NBN News.
Legacy has helped hundreds of war widows and their families since it was formed by ex-servicemen in 1923. This week, the charity's volunteers will be asking the public to dig deep and buy a badge to help keep the organisation alive. Newcastle Legacy President Warren Handley says while almost all World War I widows have passed on, the need for the foundation is as strong as ever.
Legacy is changing in its focus. We are attracting now younger widows. We have quite a number of widows from the Vietnam War, and now we're also getting widows in from peacekeeping operations.
According to Mr Handley, Legacy helps around 126,000 widows Australia-wide, with more joining up every day.
Whereas once we saw the role perhaps finishing about 2015, we now see that our role will continue well into the future.
There's no doubting the importance Legacy holds for those currently serving in the armed forces.
It's something that I've actually wondered about if I were to be deployed on service. It's very comforting to know that Legacy is there for my family to offer grief counselling if need be.
Madeline Bond, NBN News.
After today's developments, it'd be a brave man that'd back Bryce Gaudry for another term at Macquarie Street. Just hours after Premier Maurice Yemmer anointed Jody McKay as his preferred candidate, an administrative committee of the New South Wales ALP chose to refer the selection of a candidate to the party's national executive, and Bryce Gaudry is not a happy man.
People from outside New South Wales, in a totally undemocratic way, can now confer on the seat of Newcastle on a candidate who was not even a member of the Labor Party yesterday, and the local ALP members have no say whatsoever. It's an absolute disgrace.
Bryce is a hard-working, good and decent person, and I respect Bryce. But the Premier has asked me to join his team, and as I said, I'm honoured and privileged to be in this position.
It's about renewal and getting a balance of new quality candidates to match the experience and the quality that we have.
Jody McKay is a former newsreader and self-employed businesswoman. She cites the lack of movement at the steelworks site and improved public transport as the city's major issues. Lord Mayor John Tate, who'd been widely touted to stand against Mr Gaudry, could not be contacted today. Blake Doyle, NBN News.
Celebrity politicians are nothing new. Just take Hollywood star Arnold Schwarzenegger, now Governor of California, and Midnight Oil frontman Peter Garrett.
Certainly parties see themselves as being in need of candidates that have a recognition factor, and increasingly the values of the party are secondary to the recognition factor.
Former mayors like Frank Sartor are now commonplace in state and federal politics, and it seemed Newcastle may follow suit with John Tate. But Jodie McKay has emerged as the latest public figure to move into the political arena.
I think she's probably got a degree of recognition which the ALP is probably counting on and hoping that that recognition will translate into votes.
And while a high-profile candidate can be an asset in heavily contested seats, Jim Jost says that in a safe seat, a celebrity candidate chosen by the powers that be can cause a voter backlash.
Not because of any failing of the candidate, but because the people in the electorate who have been supporting that party for some time take offence at having been told, well, you'll cop whatever we give you. And sometimes they simply won't.
Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
Each of the brigades has permit issuing officers. They're free of charge and takes about 5 minutes to obtain one. If you don't obtain one, you are breaking the law and there are stiff penalties.
It's one of the region's best-known vineyards perched on the side of a hill leading into the epicentre of the Lower Hunters wine industry. But after 38 years, the Rothbury estate now has a new name after Hope Estate Wines purchased it from previous owner Foster's. For winemaker Michael Hope, today was the realisation of a lifelong dream.
If I look back to when I started 12 years ago, bought my first vineyard at Broke, and used to drive past Rothbury, the iconic Rothbury site here on top of the hill, and you always look at it and say, oh, that'd be a dream. You know, one day it'd be great to be in somewhere like that.
Ironically, settlement of the sale happened yesterday, which would have been the 76th birthday of founding Rothbury chairman, the late Len Evans. And even though there's a new label in the house, Michael Hope believes Len would be happy the site is now back in local ownership.
Which is how it started in the good old days of Len and Murray Tyrrell. And yeah, I certainly feel the burden or the expectation or the weight of history, I suppose you'd call it.
Underground mining beneath the Broke winery prompted Hope's relocation, which has meant the company has spent the past 2 years focused on exports rather than domestic sales. That was one of the first benefits to flow today, with the company recommencing cellar-door wine sales. Gary Blair, NBN News.
It's a different culture, you know, so obviously everyone's a bit more open here, but everyone's very friendly, very welcoming to us as a group as well.
This is a wonderful opportunity for Tourism New South Wales to showcase our destination to the listeners back home.
Legacy has helped hundreds of war widows and their families since it was formed by ex-servicemen in 1923. This week, the charity's volunteers will be asking the public to dig deep and buy a badge to help keep the organisation alive. Newcastle Legacy President Warren Handley says while almost all World War I widows have passed on, the need for the foundation is as strong as ever.
Legacy is changing in its focus. We are attracting now younger widows. We have quite a number of widows from the Vietnam War, and now we're also getting widows in from peacekeeping operations.
According to Mr Handley, Legacy helps around 126,000 widows Australia-wide, with more joining up every day.
Whereas once we saw the role perhaps finishing about 2015, we now see that our role will continue well into the future.
There's no doubting the importance Legacy holds for those currently serving in the armed forces.
It's something that I've actually wondered about if I were to be deployed on service. It's very comforting to know that Legacy is there for my family to offer grief counselling if need be.
Madeline Bond, NBN News.
It's nice to be in the right place at the right time, and Jason Taylor certainly has been in that position lately. Brian Smith's departure earlier in the year gave him a first-grade opportunity at Parramatta, as well as helping him make a decision to go to South Sydney to further his career as assistant coach behind Sean McRae. However, with Ricky Stuart's shock sacking during the week and a clause in Jason Taylor's contract stating that he can be released from South if he has a first-grade offer elsewhere, put him in the right place at the right time. Now, for the record, the Roosters never contacted him in relation to a coaching position there, but speculation was enough to force the Rabbitohs' hand, and in a matter of days, another NRL coach in Sean McRae was sacked, and Jason Taylor gets the top job at the Bunnies, and good luck to him. Now, we all know that coaching is a tumultuous ride at best, but most people can't understand how Ricky Stuart, with 3 grand final appearances in 5 years, could be sacked. But spare a thought for his assistant coach, Shane Flanagan, who joined the Roosters 2 years ago, coached the Jersey Flag to an undefeated premiership, last season coached the Premier League to a grand final before becoming Stuart's assistant. Now, he had only lost 6 games in 2 years. He qualifies for being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Unbelievably, he was sacked as well. Now, while some clubs have some tolerance or have more tolerance than others in giving coaches more time to build up a winning team, clubs that are used to success, like the Roosters, demand on-field results. Well, on to the last round of the season general tonight. I like the Cowboys. Saturday, 3 games, the Raiders, Storm and the Dragons. Sunday, I like the Broncos, Bulldogs and Tigers. Have a great weekend. See you next week.
He's put on a show in Sydney before, but Court Command was getting spruced up again this morning for another trip south and the biggest race of his short career. Winner of the up-and-coming stakes last week, it's the $1 million Golden Rose tomorrow that would place him firmly in the limelight.
Last week he just proved that he was, what we always thought he was going to be, and let's hope he keeps improving.
Trainer Darren Smith put the lightly raced colt through an easy run this morning at Newcastle, and while admitting to a few nerves, he's simply pleased a bold gamble has paid off. Without the backing of buyers, he bought Court Command as a yearling for $120,000, and there's a real chance of Group 3 success in just his 4th outing.
If you went to the sale and picked all the ones you wanted, you wouldn't have a big enough checkbook. But saying that, he was the horse that I always wanted to buy.
And what better way to start the spring than with a win, as Court Command's career also begins to blossom.
He's the new kid on the block, and this is only his 4th race starts. A lot of the horses tomorrow have had a little bit more experience, but saying that, this horse is untapped.
Edgeworth has the pre-season cup and the minor premiership in its keeping, but grand finals have always been a little harder to come by for the league's most consistent side in the last decade. Forced to win last weekend's final to qualify for the decider, they're approaching the last game of the season in a new light.
A different game plan and a bit more mobility and, just a bit more attack too, I think.
It's of little concern for NBN Soccer League's Coach of the Year, Peter McGuinness.
There's a few options up the sleeve. I mean, throughout the year we've probably tinkered with 3 or 4 systems on how we play, and we've been through that a few times.
And how times have changed. The 2 rival coaches on Sunday actually played with each other against Lake Macquarie back in 1993. That was the last time Lake reached the top grade decider, but after some rebuilding, they're back and plan to stay that way.
We've had a run of success this year. We want to capitalise on that yet, win the grand final. Then we want the momentum to keep going and go to the next level.
Having set the bar in recent years themselves, Edgeworth want to cash in, and nerves will be crucial.
Enjoy yourself. It's a big day. There's a good crowd there, and that's why you do all the pre-season training just for days like that. So.
It was all smiles this morning as rival coaches squared off 2 days before the big game. And while each had a hand on the cup today, it's keeping a lid on the match, which is another thing.
There's a lot of bad blood there from us, and it'll be all sorted out on the field, I'd say.
The Bay skipper referring to Lakes forward Martin Kelly, who was cleared of a high tackle charge after this incident in the major semi-final that left Jake Kerr with a broken jaw.
speaking to Jake through the week, and nothing's been done at the judiciary, so he'd like to think that there'll be a bit of a judiciary on Sunday, mate.
While Spicer added things will be kept within the rules of the game, Lakes captain Paul Skovgaard isn't so convinced and wants the referees on Sunday to ensure Bay players don't go overboard.
It'd be pretty sad for people to come out and intentionally try to take Marty out of the game. On what happened 2 weeks ago. And it's not in his hands, the judiciary system.
It'll be a big day for Nelson Bay, which has first and reserve grade playing in the season-deciding games on Sunday, while Lakes wants to round out its year the best possible way.
And the day we're just going to have a good game. I think that's what they should be focused on as well.
Jim Callanan, NBN News.
Not even a speeding fine en route to Auto Salon could stop Jeremy Rourke from showcasing his machine.
Speedo could be out.
The modification bug had clearly bitten hard.
So from there, kind of snowball with a body kit, respray, 22-inch wheels, and then getting the airbag suspension, the sound system.
But even after $65,000 in modifications, this beast is still a work in progress.
If you want to keep it up there, you've got to have something new coming out every show.
The ego boost well worth the money spent.
I'll be lying if I didn't say so, but obviously it's one of those things that at the end of the day, when you build something like that, you really enjoy it when people appreciate what you've done.
But it wasn't all for looks. Drivers testing their vroom power on the dyno. This Nissan clocked 284 kilowatts on the dyno, but that pales into comparison to this black beauty, which registered 383 kilowatts. And that's just the start. Modifications already nudging more than $100,000. Its owner now plans to add NOS, the effect set to rocket its power outage into the 500s. But while some found their power under the bonnet, for others it came from the rear, a $26,000 virtual nightclub in the boot. And what's music without dancing? Christy Carter, NBN News.
It was back to Newcastle for Liam Reddy and Ante Milicic, now part of Queensland's campaign. And the visitors didn't waste any time through Brazilian import Ronaldo da Costa. The blame game continued when Joel Griffiths picked up his first yellow card before both captains fumbled own goals in an extraordinary turn of events. Just before the break, Queensland couldn't believe this. Liam Reddy left seething after Bridge levelled things going into the break. Newcastle had some good chances early in the second half, going short, then long, but just couldn't follow through. Vaughan Coveney picked up a yellow card. A short time later, Queensland got plenty of value from a free kick. The Jets showed plenty of fight, perhaps too much, when Joel Griffiths continued his skirmish with Sasa Roganovsky. Griffiths picking up a second yellow card and subsequently sent off and set to miss next week's match against Adelaide.
None of the early fireworks most thought were coming, just a flying Joel Rawlins, who opened Lake's account. The Bay answered with Shane McIntyre, who charged down before charging after their first points, and a 2-0 lead. A big run from Michael Small, who wrestled the advantage back the way of Lakes. While Paul Skovgaard thought he'd added to the count, only to be disallowed for a double movement. What an impact Leo Dinover made off the bench for the Bay, sending Jai Hill over. But Rawlins returned serve just on half-time, regathering his own kick before finding Daniel Frame in the picture for more points. The lead continued to change throughout the second half as well, but the sealer came through Tom Ryan's bust and Rawlins' finish, and Lakes United had the Tooheys Cup in the bag for 2006. There's no inch given from either side in grand finals, but you'll take goals any way you can find them, and a deflection helped Edgeworth claim the first goal after 10 minutes. Lake Macquarie's reply also came from an error, as Glenn Colpack's inch-perfect strike found Dean Conway stranded. The Eagles don't have a great grand final record in recent years, and missed opportunities began to mount. Zelko Babic, though, ice cool when he found room to send Lake Macquarie into the break, leading 2-1. The second half belonged to Ilya Prenzowski, who made the most of everything that fell his way. 3-1 down, Edgeworth were forced to chance their arm, and it only led to more pain on the scoreboard, with a second to the Lake Macquarie striker and their first ever top-grade grand final win.
The queues stretched from Energy Australia Stadium's ticket offices to the trotting track, with some nights season ticket holders lining up well before daybreak to secure their semi-final tickets.
4 o'clock this morning, but there was some people here before I got here, and then it's just been a gradual build-up all morning.
I'd have come last night if I could have, but I even got my husband to bring the caravan in, but he said no.
Some die-hard supporters even planning a return trip tomorrow when tickets become available to the general public.
I've been leaving home about 3 in the morning, maybe 4, to get here with the rest of the boys.
At 9 a.m, ticket offices opened and the countdown was on. But it wasn't long before fans faced another anxious wait, as the strong demand for NRL semi-final tickets caused Ticketmaster's system to overload and temporarily crash. Late this afternoon, around 11,000 tickets had been sold, leaving another 15,000 up for grabs tomorrow. Madeline Bond, NBN News.
Petrol theft in southwestern Sydney has reached near epidemic proportions, with 80 cases a month being reported to police in Bankstown alone. In Newcastle, it's reached about 15 cases a month, and some stations like the Metro at Williamtown have introduced prepaying in a bid to reduce their losses.
I think it's rude, but you can understand why they do it. There's obviously plenty of people that are filling up and taking off, so they've got to cover themselves, I suppose.
Well, unfortunately, we're living in an era where we're probably going to see more and more of this prepaid fuel.
At the moment, it's only at night, but that could extend to daylight hours as price-dodging thieves get more creative. In Sydney, they're stealing someone else's number plates before they fill up.
That people are putting other number plates on their vehicle, filling their cars up and then putting their own number plates back on. Again, it's a serious offence to steal motor vehicle number plates, and certainly I'm hoping that we don't find that trend happening up here, because it's just the same as stealing a motor vehicle as stealing the plates, and they carry similar penalties.
The downside is that if we do nothing, you as the motorists are always going to be paying for those who are pinching at the end. We've got to get the money back from somewhere, and of course somebody else pays, and it's the honest people that pay.
Paul Lobb, NBN News. It's the police visit to parents after a crash like this that began the Stop the 4 O'Clock Knock campaign. 800 pupils from Cessnock's Mount View High, the first of 6 Hunter schools, to be given the information that aims to save their parents the shock of that early morning police visit.
We can give them strategies to stay safe, we can show them what the consequences are, but the bottom line is that their destiny is in their hands, and they've got to make the right decisions, and it's up to them.
The Catholic Church's welfare agency Centre Care and state government agencies are backing the seminar series based on the real-life aftermath of serious crashes. Newcastle University student Crystal Egan today told pupils her story of surviving a crash that claimed 2 lives near Taree 3 years ago.
Hopefully I can help to give them a broader knowledge about how quickly and easily and just like that it can just all go wrong.
Other seminars will hear from a trauma nurse and a mother who lost 2 children in a Hunter Valley car crash. Members of the public can attend community seminars on Wednesday night at Dungog and Thursday night at Scone. Gary Blair, NBN News.
Out of the classroom and into the blood bank. Around 60 students from Lambton High swapped pen and paper for a pressure pack today to help pump up severely depleted blood stocks.
Our youth are really great donors. We find that we have a lot of young people that donate on a regular basis, which is really great. They set an example for the public.
The Red Cross Blood Service says there's little more than 36-hour supply left of some of Australia's most common blood types. Just like food, blood has a shelf life, so there's a constant need for the life-saving fluid.
Type O is the one we have a major shortage of at the moment. So if you are type O, we do really need you. However, we won't turn away any other blood types. Specifically in New South Wales, though, we are after A positive as well.
In the Hunter, blood can be collected at the Donor Centre in Newcastle as well as at Maitland and Cessnock hospitals. Donor mobiles also make stopovers at schools and workplaces. Jessica Phyllis, NBN News.
Enjoying the bye at the weekend, the thinking at Newcastle was no one could get injured, but people can still get sick. Danny Medeiros missing the session through illness, but will be fine to play, while David Siege disappeared up the tunnel mid-training session.
Just stirred his back up a bit this morning, but we think that'll settle down okay.
He's locked in a battle for the fullback spot with Milton Thaiday, and while the latter showed all the signs he's overcome an ankle problem, he has to prove it all again tomorrow.
Yeah, deep down myself, I think I'll get through it pretty easy. It's just, we'll see what sort of tests they are.
The real spotlight, though, is on Hull partner Andrew Johns. Jared Mullen has excelled at 5'8" in recent weeks, but the experience of Kurt Gidley has him firmly in the running.
I know both Kurt and Jared Mullen will be in the 17 somewhere, but who starts on the bench and who starts at number 6 is up to the coach.
I guess, that's an area that we're pretty healthy in as well, and we've just got to come up with the right mix of people there to get the job done.
That extends to the interchange bench, as Newcastle boasts depth across the board in the lead-up to Game 1. A match well on its way to selling out.
I'm busting the go. I haven't played in semis for 5 years, and this is why you play footy and do all the hard work, so, I can't wait for it.
Jim Callanan, NBN News.
We'll not be making the trip to Adelaide. We need to do some tests to make sure we find exactly where he's at from a physical point of view.
When Scott Collins dived across, Lakes United already knew they had the Tooheys Cup all wrapped up against Nelson Bay. Supporters did their best to join the celebrations, but the fence wasn't the only thing falling down. A patched-up Paul Skovgaard, though, adding yet another premiership to his collection, along with the Man of the Match award.
They may have helped in getting the award. You couldn't miss me out there on the field, you know what I mean? But the boys dug deep. We knew we had to play for 80 minutes today, and we've come away after glory.
The party sure to carry on for a while yet in a region now sporting 2 major football titles. Lake Macquarie City ending a 39-year wait between drinks to toast top-grade premiership success with the NBN Soccer League Championship. The 4-1 win against Edgeworth signalling celebrations befitting a memorable day. Meanwhile, Singleton will head to Scone this weekend to see if they can't do likewise in the Group 21 Rugby League competition after they beat Denman in the preliminary final.
A civil contractor was using a backhoe for work on a block of land being developed in Kyle Street behind the former National Textiles plant when the excavation job struck a problem.
Just after 10 o'clock, the fire brigade were actually called to this address to a gas leak. We sent a unit of Talara down to investigate. They've found a ruptured gas main that's been caused by a worker on the scene here.
Even though an Agility gas emergency crew was quickly on scene, high-pressure gas escaping into the atmosphere forced workers across the road at the ultra-floor flooring factory to flee.
One of the adjoining businesses, they self-evacuated and they've actually closed down for the day now.
Police established an exclusion zone around the scene as firefighters wearing breathing apparatus maintained watch over the repair crew in case a fire erupted. Once the situation was brought under control, traffic was allowed to return to the busy western end of the industrial estate.
It is very difficult. I mean, we have obviously shut down parts of the road, but we try and be flexible so that not all businesses are affected by this incident.
It took more than 4 hours to isolate and repair the damaged section of gas main. The Workcover Authority has begun an investigation into the incident.
Sadly, it's the end of an era for the Mater Hospital, but Chairman Brian McGuigan says the decision was inevitable, with the Sisters of Mercy more than ready to pass on their beloved hospital.
The sisters, unfortunately, are getting older and fewer of them, and the order felt that they could not undertake the responsibilities of the hospital that they have done here so very ably for the last 85 years.
Another order, the Sisters of the Little Company of Mary will take over, promising no job losses and no effect on the Martyrs redevelopment or the public-private partnership.
We're just delighted to be invited in by the sisters to continue their mission.
The Little Company of Mary established the Calvary Health Aged and Community Care Organisation, which now operates 25 services across Australia, including the former Allendale Aged Care Facility at Cessnock. Now known as the Calvary Retirement Community, the Cessnock facility failed half of its accreditation standards, including areas relating to the personal care of residents, following a surprise audit in March. But according to the Little Company of Mary, those issues have been rectified.
The usual high standards will apply, and indeed at Cessnock we are fully accredited.
Ownership will be transferred by the end of the year. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
The man behind the redevelopment of the Nobby's Headland site, Neil Slater, told the Newcastle Business Club today that he's had to battle ridiculous levels of bureaucracy to get the plan approved.
It's been a long, hard fight, but I think the results will be worth it. And what the Heritage Council did and Newcastle City Council in the provisions they've made will make it a better site, and I think we'll be all benefit from that.
As well as a 50-seat restaurant, Neil Slater's consortium will turn 3 existing cottages on the headland into 8 accommodation suites. It'll cost $400 to $600 a night to stay there, but you have at least 18 months to save up.
Finally, we have a DA, so things are going in the right way. We hope to turn soil on the 1st of February, and roughly 12 months after that we should be open up there.
Also in business news, Hunter Business Chamber CEO Glenn Thornton has resigned from his post to take up a position as General Manager of an international engineering company based in the Hunter. His replacement at the Chamber will be announced within weeks. Paul Lobb, NBN News.
As usual when he plays for Newcastle, Andrew Johns was named captain, but it was Steve Simpson who fronted the media today, and he'll also face the referee on Friday night.
Just take the heat off a few other boys, and when I go off and have a break, Matt Gidds will take over that role as well.
While he reportedly offered to give up the captaincy altogether on his return from a 2-week suspension, the compromise between the halfback and coach leaves Johns to look after the things he does best: run the football side.
It's been 4 weeks since he's played himself. He's going to have enough to worry about. He runs the team anyway at training and in games, and between him and Danny Badouris, I think they can get the on-field stuff done pretty well.
Kurt Gidley won the spot to partner Johns in the halves, while Jared Mullen will start from the bench, while Milton Thaiday will don the number 1 as the coach arms himself with the team with a potent attacking force.
It's an opportunity for us, I guess, to have Danny Badouris, Andrew Johns, Kurt Gidley, Jared Mullen, maybe Milton Thaiday operating at the same time, which I think will give us a fair bit of strike power in attack.
You know, it's definitely been a hard start to the year. Like, Mel's just been on fire. Like, she won the first 3 contests in a row, and you know, there's not really been any room for anyone else in there. But yeah, no, I'm just so happy to have my first win.
Joel Rawlins' individual brilliance has been a highlight all season, and none more so in the biggest game of the year when he opened the scoring. Touching down some 25 times in the regular season alone, his ability to create opportunities for either himself or teammates continued in the finals, with great success. His second try against the Bay on the weekend sealed Lakes the premiership and his spot in the representative team to take on the visiting Maori on October 6. Meanwhile, a strong-looking NBN Select football side has been named to play the Gold Coast also next month. The local federation is keen to re-establish representative football firmly on its calendar, and coaches couldn't be happy with the team.
It's strong across the park, so and it's very exciting, like working with some of the players like your Peter Junkovic, who's got leading goal scorer, and your Dougie West, who got Player of the Year, so it's very exciting.
Over time, it's hoped the side can develop into a genuine team local players can use to press claims for higher honours, like the A-League.
Could be even like a stepping stone for the Jets as well. But I think the main thing is it's a great incentive for all players to play with all the high-quality players in the league, and hopefully they can progress from that.
The team will play on the Gold Coast on October 14.
Unseasonably warm weather has people out of their homes and onto the beach much earlier than usual, which, according to Robert Sirash, should help one of Newcastle's most lucrative industries become even more profitable.
There was a study commissioned by the University of Newcastle, and that found that the surfing industry turned over almost $40 million.
Local designer Alex Norrie says she's been swamped with orders for the perfect cosy.
Business is great, it's really busy already. Summer started really early.
Her cheeky one-off designs are in high demand.
A lot of the girls going in specific swimwear competitions like Miss World or Miss Universe come to me for that special pair of swimmers.
In fact, this teeny-weeny red and pink polka dot bikini has been commissioned by Jennifer Hawkins. Meanwhile, surfboard maker Jai Burns says he's also received an influx of orders.
It's been pretty good. Coming into summer, it looks like it's going to be another good year. But yeah, we've been definitely, I think the numbers been up probably 3 times this time of year, so yeah, it's looking good.
Madeline Bond, NBN News.
After pleasant spring weather for the last few days, there was a rude shock this morning as the hunter woke to Mother Nature's mayhem. Winds reached storm force strength, rain pelted down with up to 80 millimetres recorded at Morisset, and maximum temperatures 6 degrees below average. Ships were stranded, sent out to sea to ride out the hazardous conditions, with the port closed to traffic. Just days ago, this deserted patch of sand was buzzing with beachgoers thanks to unseasonally warm weather. While this normally dry stormwater canal became a fast-flowing torrent, how quickly things can change. And while many were sheltering from the wild and woolly weather, this NRMA mechanic was battling the forces of nature to help jumpstart a car. And if you feel sorry for him, here's a few others in the running for taking out the prize for the worst job during wet weather. These council workers were almost knee-deep in water, attempting to unblock a drain at Broadmeadow. Federal Park at Wallsend looked more like a swimming pool after Ironbark Creek broke its banks and overflowed onto sports fields. And visibility on the roads left a lot to be desired, but thankfully there were no serious accidents. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
Little remains of the timber and iron cottage, which was discovered alight by residents of Brunker Street, Curry, just before 4:30 this morning. The flames so intense that it required 3 fire trucks to combat the outbreak.
The fire brigade responded. The crews of Curry, Western and Abermain. On arrival, this house was well involved in fire.
Firefighters immediately had a challenge on their hands because the flames were being fanned by strong winds. The outbreak spreading far enough to set the exterior wall of the house next door alight, giving fire officers 2 incidents to tackle at once.
Firefighters were quick to act. They put out protection lines, but it still took about an hour to bring under control.
The resident of the house that was destroyed was away at the time of the fire, leaving the fire brigades to work with forensic police on establishing a cause for the outbreak.
We're working with them at the moment. Given the intensity of the fire and the damage to the building, that does prove to be difficult.
Gary Blair, NBN News.
It's been 7 years since BHP's 1,432 workers marched out of the company gates for the last time. The steel-making giant had operated in the area for 84 years until it closed, and at its peak employed around 12,000 people.
Newcastle, I believe, was built on the back of the steelworks, and the men and women of steel played a big part in that and the building of the Newcastle area.
According to former BHP employee Aubrey Brooks, while some of his ex-colleagues have found new jobs, others are still unemployed and struggling to make ends meet.
Some people are doing it very tough. There's an unemployment position in the country today. We've lost a lot of tradesmen. Pasminco's closed, BHP closed, the dockyard's closed, so all those trades are very vulnerable now.
He says this weekend's reunion will provide an opportunity for those still looking for full-time work to get a new job through the Pathways program. The reunion will be held at the Mayfield Sport and Recreation Club from midday on Saturday. Madeline Bond, NBN News.
As he walked into Knights headquarters this afternoon, a subdued Mitchell Sargent admitted he was shocked by the interest from the Newcastle club.
I was really worried, didn't know where my future was held, and to get a call to play with Newcastle Knights was definitely a great call to have.
Sacked last month by the Cowboys after failing an in-house drug test for cocaine, ironically after a loss to the Knights in Townsville. CEO Ken Conway says the new 3-year deal will be subject to ongoing counselling and stringent drug testing, guidelines agreed to by the NRL.
On that basis, they have agreed to re-register Mitchell when we lodge his contract.
The Knights initiated moves to sign the 27-year-old former country origin prop, and while the CEO admits it will cause mixed reactions, players and management were supportive.
We consulted Brian Smith and a number of other important club stakeholders to make sure that we weren't going to alienate.
Sargent now looking forward to adding firepower to the forwards, with experienced Knights prop Craig Smith set to retire.
Definitely over the moon to be given a second chance and to be playing with the guys like Joey Johns and Danny Medeiros, Steve Simpson.
Mitchell Hughes, NBN News. One of 3 players to fill the fullback role for the Knights this year, David Siege, is now far from the last resort. A standout performance against the Panthers in round 25, the icing on the cake.
A couple of weeks ago I was in the Premier League and it looked like I was heading back to Queensland to play Queensland Cup, and now I'm playing in an NRL semi-final, mate, and got another contract next year, so yeah, things are looking up.
The wet weather gear got a workout this morning as torrential rain made life difficult at Newcastle's final session. With forecasts for more showers tomorrow, Manly's decision to play 5 experienced props could pay dividends.
You know, they've got 3 front rows on the bench, so they've made no secret of how they're going to play the game. It's going to be up the middle.
With a career plagued by injury seemingly behind him, Luke DeVico is itching for another taste of semi-final football.
One stage I didn't think I'd probably be ever playing again, so to get another chance is fantastic and really looking forward to it.
Craig Smith's return to the Knights pack could prove timely, as will the return of Andrew Johns following a 2-week suspension.
He's going to be jumping out of his skin tomorrow night, and we just probably need to make sure that we're on board with him straight away. And
if wet weather persists, Hagan says the kicking game of Jared Mullen and Johns will be vital to the Knights' success. Mitchell Hughes, NBN News.